Hey, my name is Daniel. I'm 27. Until 3 months ago, I was just the mechanic across the street from my best friend's family. The kid who grew up in their house like a second son. Then one night, his 41-year-old sister came back to town, sat on my porch with insects buzzing around the light above us, and she looked at me and said, "You're not seeing me as a kid anymore, right?" The smell of her citrus and vanilla perfume mixed with lake air, and the porch swing creaked when she leaned closer. 2 weeks later, I found a recording she'd made for her psychology project, where she described me without using my name, and her voice cracked when she said, "He made me feel my age was just a number, not a sentence." If you're watching this right now, tell me where you're from in the comments. Because I still don't know if what we did was wrong. I was sitting on my porch at dawn when Elena's car backed out of the driveway across the street. Coffee in one hand, phone dark in my lap. The street still caught between night and morning, that blue-gray hour when insects hum under the last porch lights and everything feels like a secret. Her brake lights painted my truck red for a second. Then she shifted into drive and disappeared down the cul-de-sac. It wasn't the first time I'd watched her leave like that. Wouldn't be the last. But 3 months ago, 3 months ago, I didn't even know she was coming back. 3 months earlier, my life had a rhythm. Wake up. Black coffee. Drive to Martinez Auto, where I worked under Nate Rivera, who was 30 and thought he was 40, always giving advice nobody asked for. I'd spend 8 hours with grease under my nails, fixing brake lines and rotating tires for people who'd lived in this town longer than I'd been alive. After work, I'd come home to my small house. My dad's house, really. The one he left me when he died 9 years ago. Modest, worn siding, a porch that creaked. But it was mine, and it sat directly across from the Hart family home, which was bigger, newer, remodeled twice since I was a kid. I'd grown up in that house as much as my own. Mark Hart was my best friend since we were 7. His mom, Lydia, treated me like a second son. And his older sister, Elena. Well, Elena was always just Elena, the bossy older sister. The one who left for college when I was still in middle school, got married to some real estate guy named Greg, and only came back for holidays. I didn't think about her much, until the night Mark called and told me she was coming home. "Mom's recovering from surgery," Mark said, his voice crackling through my phone speaker. "Elena's taking a semester off to help out. She's finishing some psych degree or something. Anyway, she'll be here next week." I was on my porch when he told me, scrolling through a video I was editing for a local dealership. "That's good," I said. "Your mom needs the help." "Yeah, and Elena needs a break from campus life, I guess. She's, like, the oldest person in her classes. It's weird for her." I laughed. She always did like being in charge. Mark laughed too. "Dude, remember when she made us organize the garage by color? We were 12. I remember. We talked a little longer, mostly about work and Lydia's recovery timeline. When we hung up, I set my phone down and stared at the Hart house. The windows were dark except for the porch light, which always stayed on. Elena Hart, coming back. I told myself it didn't matter. The next morning, Mrs. Delaney was already at her window when I left for work. She lived 2 houses down, a widow with nothing to do but water her roses and watch the street like it was a reality show. She waved at me from her bathrobe, coffee mug in hand. "Morning, Daniel," I waved back, trying to get to my truck fast. "Heard about Lydia," she called. "Such a blessing Elena's coming back to help. Family's everything, isn't it?" "Yes, ma'am." I always liked Elena. So, put together. Though I suppose Greg's too busy with his business to take time off. I didn't answer that one. Just smiled, climbed into my truck, and left. At the garage, Nate was waiting with a grin. "Heard your second family's getting a visitor." I popped the hood on a Civic. News travels fast. Small town, man. So what's she like? The sister? I don't know. Haven't seen her in years. But you grew up with her, right? She's 14 years older than me. She was already gone by the time I hit high school. Nate whistled. 14 years. Damn. Bet she's all sophisticated now. Married to money and everything. I didn't answer. Focused on the engine. But something about the conversation stuck with me all day. That night, I walked around the block just to clear my head. The lake road curved off the main street, leading down to the old wooden dock where I used to sit as a kid. I didn't go all the way, just stood at the entrance, hands in my pockets, remembering. I was 15 when my dad died. Heart attack in his sleep. No warning. I'd gone to that dock one night a few years later, 19 and drunk and crying because I didn't know what the hell I was doing with my life. And Elena had driven by, saw me, and sat down next to me without saying a word for 10 minutes. When she finally spoke, she just said, "Breathe, Daniel. Just breathe." I went home that night feeling less alone. I hadn't thought about that moment in years. 4 days later, I helped Mark get the house ready. Lydia was still at a short-term rehab facility, recovering enough to come home with in-home care. Mark and I moved furniture around, set up a bedroom downstairs so she wouldn't have to climb stairs, and fixed a loose porch step that had been annoying her for months. "Greg's wiring money for all the upgrades," Mark said, tightening a screw. "He's good about that stuff. Just never here, you know?" I nodded. Greg Hart was one of those guys who solved problems with money and phone calls. I'd met him a handful of times over the years. Always friendly, always distracted, always looking at his phone. Mrs. Delaney watched us from her window the whole time. I could feel her eyes tracking every movement. That evening, Lydia came home with Mark. She looked smaller than I remembered, her hair thinner, her movements careful, but her smile was the same. "Daniel," she said, gripping my hand. "Thank God. Mark can't fix anything without breaking 2 other things." Mark rolled his eyes. "Thanks, Mom." "Elena's driving in tomorrow," Lydia added, settling into her new recliner. "She'll be here by afternoon." I helped them finish setting up, then walked back across the street as the sun set. The Hart porch light clicked on behind me, casting long shadows across the pavement. I lay in bed that night wide awake, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow afternoon. The next day, Mark and I stood on the front lawn, pretending to work on a gutter but really just waiting. Mrs. Delaney was at her window. Obviously. Then Elena's car appeared at the end of the street. A silver sedan. Campus parking sticker in the corner. Overstuffed trunk. Coffee cup in the console. And Elena. She stepped out wearing jeans and a faded college hoodie, her dark hair pulled into a messy bun. No makeup. Tired eyes. She looked different. Younger and more worn at the same time. Not the polished, put-together woman I remembered from holiday dinners. She hugged Mark first, quick and tight. Then she went to Lydia. Slower. More careful. "You look good, Mom," she said softly. "Liar," Lydia replied, but she was smiling. Mark waved me over. "Help with the bags?" Elena turned, and our eyes met for the first time in probably 5 years. "Daniel Cole," she said, a small smile tugging at her lips. "You finally grew into your ears?" I laughed, caught off guard. "Thanks, I think." "I mean it. You look good." Her voice was warm. Real. Not the distant, polite tone she used to use when I was a kid tagging along with Mark. I grabbed 2 of her bags from the trunk. As I passed her, I caught the faint scent of citrus and vanilla, mixed with coffee and road trip exhaustion. Inside, we set her stuff down in her old bedroom upstairs. The room was half storage now, boxes stacked in the corners, but her old desk was still there. "Home sweet home," she murmured, looking around. Her phone rang. Greg's name lit up the screen. She answered on speaker. "Hey. Hey, babe. You make it okay?" "Just got here." "Good, good. Listen, I'm slammed today, but I'll call tonight. Tell your mom I'm handling the in-home care bills. And Daniel—" He raised his voice slightly. "Thanks for helping out, man. I owe you." Prepared to resume narrative from established outline parameters. The user wants me to continue with part 1 of the story, covering roughly chapters 1 to 12 from the outline. I need to maintain the tone, pacing, and style requested. Let me continue from where I left off. "No problem," I said. "All right, gotta run. Love you, Elle." "Love you too." She hung up and stared at the phone for a second longer than necessary. That night, we had dinner together, Lydia, Elena, Mark, and me. Like old times, except Lydia was quieter, Elena kept checking her phone, and Mark filled the silence with stories about work. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah Bloom, a regular client at the garage. Single mom, nice enough, always a little flirty. "Hey, can you check my alignment next week? Also, drinks sometime?" I glanced up and saw Elena watching my screen. Her expression was unreadable. Then she looked away. After dinner, I stood on my porch, cooling off in the night air. Across the street, the Hart porch light clicked on. Elena stepped outside, arms wrapped around herself. We both paused. Then she lifted a hand in a small, awkward wave. I waved back. She went inside first. I stayed a little longer, listening to the insects hum and the distant sound of the lake. The first week with Elena back started with errands. Mark called me one morning in a panic. He was stuck at work, and Lydia needed a prescription picked up. Elena didn't know the town routes well anymore. "Can you take her?" Mark asked. "I know it's your day off, but I'll take her." Nate raised an eyebrow when I told him I was leaving early. "Chauffeur duty for royalty?" "She's not royalty." "Uh-huh." I picked Elena up an hour later. She climbed into my truck wearing leggings and an oversized sweater, her hair down this time, falling past her shoulders. "Thanks for this," she said, buckling in. "I feel like I don't know this town anymore." It hasn't changed much. We drove to the pharmacy first. She stared out the window the whole way, quiet. "How's campus?" I asked. She laughed, but it sounded tired. "I'm the oldest person in every class. The professor called on me last week and said, 'Let's hear from someone with life experience.' It was humiliating." "I'm sure you're doing great." "I'm doing fine, but I'm invisible, you know? Not in a bad way, just young people don't see me. And when they do, they see the old lady auditing psych classes." I didn't know what to say to that. At the grocery store, we ran into people who recognized her. The cashier asked about Greg. A neighbor asked if she was back for good. Elena smiled politely, gave vague answers, and kept moving. At the coffee counter, she bought us both drinks. "My treat," she said, "for being my driver." We sat on a bench outside the store, sipping coffee in the late afternoon sun. "Mark says you do video work," she said. "Yeah, editing mostly. Car commercials, small businesses, nothing fancy." "That's impressive." "It's just side money. Still, you're making something. That matters." It was the first real conversation I'd had with her as an equal, not as Mark's little friend, not as the neighbor kid, just us. When I dropped her off that evening, Mrs. Delaney was watering her roses again. Elena waved at her. Mrs. Delaney waved back, but her eyes were sharp. I heard the faint click of her blinds as I walked back to my truck. 2 nights later, I was on my porch after dinner when Elena crossed the street. She startled me. I hadn't heard her coming. "Hey," she said softly. "Mind if I sit?" "Go ahead." She sat on the steps next to me, close enough that I could smell her perfume again, citrus and vanilla. It was becoming familiar. We didn't talk at first, just sat there, listening to the insects buzz around the porch light. "I needed air," she finally said. "That house feels so small sometimes. It's a big house. You know what I mean?" I did. "Campus is lonely," she continued. "But here I'm surrounded by people who love me, and I still feel invisible. Does that make sense?" "Yeah." She turned to look at me, her eyes searching. "You're not seeing me as a kid anymore, right?" The question landed between us like a stone dropped into still water. I swallowed. "I never really saw you as a kid. You were always the grown-up in the room." She smiled, but it was sad. "I don't feel like a grown-up anywhere lately." Our knees were almost touching. The porch swing creaked in the breeze behind us, and the night air was thick with something I couldn't name. Then we both heard it. The faint click of Mrs. Delaney's blinds. Elena straightened, looked back at her house. Stood. "It's late," she said. "I should go." "Yeah." She walked back across the street, the porch light behind her glowing like a spotlight. I watched until she disappeared inside. Then I sat there for another hour, replaying her question over and over. "You're not seeing me as a kid anymore, right?" No, I wasn't. The next night, I helped Mark move a new recliner into Lydia's room. Elena was there, grading papers at the kitchen table, hair piled on top of her head, glasses perched on her nose. Lydia looked between us and smiled. "Elena smiles more when Daniel's around." Elena's face went red. "Mom." "What? It's true." Mark didn't notice. He was too busy figuring out how to angle the chair through the doorway. Later, after Mark put Lydia to bed, Elena and I ended up on the back porch with beers. It was quieter back there, away from the street, away from Mrs. Delaney's watchful eyes. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Sure." "Do you ever feel like you're living someone else's life?" I thought about it. "Sometimes." "I chose all of this," she said, gesturing vaguely. "College, Greg, the house, everything. And it's fine. It's a good life. But I don't feel like myself in it. Does that make sense?" "Yeah." Our knees brushed under the small table. Neither of us moved. The porch swing creaked again, and her perfume mixed with the night air, warm and familiar. Then her phone rang. Greg's name lit up the screen. She answered, and his face filled the screen. Expensive hotel room behind. Him. Crisp shirt. Tired eyes. "Hey, babe. Just checking in. How's your mom?" "She's good." "Good, good. Hey, Daniel, you there?" I leaned into view. "Yeah. Thanks for keeping an eye on my wife and the house, man. I really appreciate it." "No problem." He barely asked about Elena's classes. Mostly talked about work, a deal closing, meetings in 3 cities. Then he said goodnight and hung up. Elena set the phone down, her knuckles white against the table. "He loves having everything handled at a distance," she said quietly. I didn't know what to say. She finished her beer in silence, then stood. "I should get some sleep." I walked home under the streetlights, feeling the weight of Greg's words. Thanks for keeping an eye on my wife. Over the next 3 days, we fell into a rhythm. Elena needed rides to campus. I had flexible hours. It made sense. We'd drive in the early mornings, coffee in the cup holders, talk radio low. She'd tell me about her psych classes, her professor who kept assigning relevant readings about midlife crises. I'd tell her about the garage, about Nate's terrible jokes, about the video projects I was working on. It felt easy, natural. One afternoon, she knocked on my door with a notebook and a nervous look. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Always." "My capstone project is on adult loneliness, hidden isolation. I need interview subjects, and would you be willing to participate?" I hesitated. "Why me?" "Because I've watched you grow up on this street. Because I think you understand what I'm studying better than you realize." So I said yes. We sat at my kitchen table, her phone recording between us. "When do you feel most alone?" she asked. I thought about it. After my dad died, I felt like I was just taking up space in everyone else's story, like I was a guest in my own life. Her eyes softened. "Do you still feel that way?" "Sometimes." She asked more questions, about staying in town, about the house, about what I hid from other people. By the end, we were both a little raw. "Can we do another session?" she asked. "Somewhere quieter? My old bedroom, maybe, so Mom doesn't overhear?" I agreed. As she left, Mrs. Delaney watched from across the street. I heard the blinds click. The next evening, I walked over at 8:30, after Lydia had gone to bed, and Mark was on a late shift. Elena led me upstairs to her old bedroom. It smelled like dust and old perfume, posters half peeled from the walls, her desk covered in textbooks. We sat on the edge of the bed, careful distance between us. She hit record and asked deeper questions this time. About invisibility. About grief. About the night I cried at the lake dock when I was 19. "I remember that night," she said softly, pausing the recording. I looked at her. "You do?" "I saw you from the road. I walked down and sat with you." "I know. I remember. I almost kissed you that night." The air left my lungs. "I didn't," she continued quickly. "Obviously. You were 19, and I was married, and you were everyone's kid. But I thought about it. I didn't know what to say." She restarted the recording, her hands shaking slightly. We finished the session. She walked me downstairs, our shoulders almost touching in the narrow hallway. At the door, our hands bumped on the knob. "Good night," she whispered. I walked home with her voice still in my head, the confession looping endlessly. "I almost kissed you that night." The next day, I drove her to campus because Mark needed the family car. On the way home, rain started. Visibility dropped fast, so I pulled under a covered parking area near the lake road. We sat there, rain drumming on the roof, the truck idling quietly. "Do you ever regret staying here?" she asked. "Sometimes. But this is home. Home can be a trap, too." Our hands rested on the center console, inches apart. The air in the truck felt thick, warm, almost suffocating. I wanted to reach for her hand. I didn't. The rain eased. I drove her home. Mrs. Delaney was on her porch when we pulled up. "Storm came out of nowhere," she called. Elena thanked me and went inside, shoulders tense. I went home, soaked, heart pounding. That night, Lydia went to bed early. Mark texted that he was on a double shift. Elena texted me, "Can we do another recording? While it's quiet?" I walked over. We went back up to her bedroom. She was in soft lounge clothes this time, hair down, looking more vulnerable than I'd ever seen her. The recording started, but it drifted quickly. Off the record, she told me more about that night at the lake. How she'd driven home feeling guilty. How she'd looked at me differently ever since. I admitted that night was when I first realized I saw her as more than family. We sat in silence, the old bed creaking under our weight. Her perfume wrapped around me, mixing with dust and old memories. We were inches apart. But we didn't kiss. She stood abruptly. "I need water." The recording was still running on the desk. I went home late, Holding the audio file she airdropped me. In bed, I played it back, listening to her voice crack when she talked about me. I fell asleep to her words. The next evening, she texted again. Want to drive to the lake? I need inspiration for the project. Lydia was napping. Mark was home. It felt safe. We drove to the old dock, the one where I'd cried at 19, the one where she'd sat beside me and told me to breathe. The planks were worn and soft under our feet. Water lapped gently against the wood. Distant lights flickered from other houses across the lake. We sat shoulder to shoulder, feet dangling above the dark water. What did you want at 19? She asked. To not feel alone. And now? I didn't answer. She rested her head gently on my shoulder. I felt the cold brush of her wedding ring against my arm as she gripped my sleeve. The dock creaked. The water shooshed. Insects hummed. After a long silence, we turned toward each other, and then we kissed. Soft, hesitant, brief. As soon as it happened, she pulled back, eyes wide. We shouldn't have done that. I know. We sat there, separated now, both breathing hard. We have to pretend it never happened, she said. I nodded. But we both knew that was impossible. We walked back to the car with a gap between us. At the neighborhood entrance, she got out a block early to walk the long way home, avoiding being seen arriving with me. I watched her small figure in my rearview mirror, guilt and longing twisting inside me. The next morning, I woke up replaying the kiss. At the garage, I dropped tools. Nate noticed. You look like someone finally noticed you exist, he said. I didn't answer. Sarah came by with car trouble, suggesting coffee sometime. I was polite, but distant. That evening, I saw Elena watching from her window as Sarah talked to me outside my house. Over the next 3 days, tiny moments accumulated. An extra mug beside my truck one morning, still warm. At family dinner, we avoided eye contact, but shared secret smiles at inside jokes. Voice notes on my phone labeled project thoughts, but clearly personal. Then Mark called one night while we were playing video games. Greg's coming up this weekend, he said casually. Says he wants to see how Mom's doing, and talk to you about that job he mentioned. The news froze me. That night, I listened to Elena's last voice note over and over, knowing everything just got more dangerous. Over the next 5 days, we prepared for Greg like we were staging a crime scene. Mark did yard work, trimming hedges and pressure washing the driveway. I helped him fix the fence gate that had been sticking for months. Elena cleaned obsessively. I'd see her through the windows, reorganizing shelves, vacuuming corners that didn't need vacuuming, hiding her notebooks in drawers. Mrs. Delaney commented loudly to her roses that company's coming, making sure everyone on the street knew. Friday afternoon, Greg's car pulled up. Black Mercedes, freshly detailed, expensive in a way that made my truck look like a shed on wheels. He stepped out wearing pressed khakis and a polo shirt, looking like a catalog model for successful husband visits small town. He hugged Lydia carefully, kissed Elena on the cheek, clapped Mark on the back, and shook my hand with a firm grip. Daniel, good to see you, man. You too. Dinner that night was all of us around the table. Lydia was in better spirits, asking Greg about his projects. He dominated the conversation, talking about developments and market trends and deals closing. He praised Elena for keeping busy with school, calling her project cute. She barely touched her food. Under the table, I saw her foot tapping rapidly against the floor. Our eyes met once when Greg made a joke about people who stay stuck in small towns forever. I didn't laugh. After dinner, Greg suggested a walk. Daniel, come on, let's talk business. We walked the property line behind the Hart house, away from the others. So, here's the thing, Greg said, hands in his pockets. I've got a new development starting up, and I need someone I can trust to oversee the contracting crews. Someone local, someone who knows quality work. That's a big responsibility. It is. But I've watched you grow up, man. You're solid, reliable. And in this business, trust is everything. He paused, looking at me directly. Everything. You understand? I understood the weight behind the word. Pay would be significant, he continued. Benefits, real career path. But it requires discretion, loyalty. Can't have people talking out of turn, you know? I get it. Good. We'll finalize details next week. We walked back to the house in silence. That night, I couldn't sleep. I got up for water around 1 a.m. and found Elena standing in the dark kitchen, lit only by the fridge light. She startled when she saw me. Sorry, I whispered. Couldn't sleep. Me neither. I grabbed a glass, filled it from the tap. The house was silent except for Lydia's faint snoring from downstairs. Elena leaned against the counter, arms wrapped around herself. Did he offer you the world? She asked quietly. Something like that? She nodded, looked away. He's good at that. We stood there in the dark, careful not to get too close, both of us aware that Greg was asleep upstairs, and one wrong move could destroy everything. Good night, Daniel, she finally whispered. Good night. The next morning, the house was busy. Greg was in the living room on his laptop. Lydia was watching TV. Mark was out running an errand. Elena and I ended up alone in the kitchen, making coffee and breakfast for everyone. I was pouring coffee when she noticed my shirt collar was crooked. Hold still, she said softly. She stepped close. Her fingers brushed my neck as she adjusted the collar, and I felt her breath on my jaw. The citrus vanilla smell was stronger up close, mixing with coffee steam. Outside, the porch swing creaked in the morning breeze. The house felt too quiet. Then Greg walked into the kitchen. Elena jerked her hand back so fast she fumbled, and her wedding ring slipped off, rolling across the counter. It clattered to the floor, spinning under the cabinet with a high, metallic sound that seemed to echo forever. We both froze. Greg stopped in the doorway, watching. Time slowed to nothing. Then he bent down, reached under the cabinet, and pulled out the ring. He straightened, holding it between 2 fingers, studying it for a moment. Then he smiled. Small. Unreadable. Can't go losing that thing, he said lightly, placing it back in Elena's palm. Sorry, she whispered. It's been loose lately. Get it resized. His tone was still light, but his eyes weren't. He poured himself coffee, made small talk about the weather, then went back to the living room. Elena stood there, gripping the ring, knuckles white. I finished making breakfast on autopilot, hands shaking slightly. A few hours later, Greg left to beat traffic. He hugged everyone, told me we'd talk about next steps soon, and climbed into his Mercedes. As his car pulled away, Elena stood in the doorway, twisting her ring, now firmly back on, while I watched from the sidewalk. We didn't speak. That evening, after Mark went out with friends and Lydia was napping, Elena texted me. Can we talk about the project? I walked over, thinking we'd continue like before. She met me on the porch instead of inviting me in. Her body language was closed, arms crossed, no smile. I deleted the project folder, she said. I withdrew you as a participant. I told my professor I overstepped boundaries using someone I knew too well. I felt like I'd been punched. Why? Because this, she gestured between us, is unfair to everyone. Lydia, Mark, Greg, you. Nothing really happened. Daniel, her voice cracked. Everything happened. Just because we didn't... It doesn't matter. I used your loneliness to fill my own. That's not research. I don't know what that is, but it's not okay. So what now? Now we go back to being family friends. No more late nights, no more recordings, no more lake trips, no more voice notes. She looked exhausted, defeated. I have to finish this semester and go back to my actual life, she continued, and you have to build yours, without me in the middle of it. I wanted to argue, to tell her it wasn't that simple, but I just nodded. I went home and checked the shared folder. Empty. The only copies left were the ones I'd saved locally on my phone. Over the next 4 days, I texted her a few times. Did Lydia need anything from the store? How was class? Everything okay? She replied at first. Short answers. Then she stopped altogether. One night, I sat on my porch in the dark, watching her bedroom light stay off, listening to insects and the creak of my empty swing. The next week felt longer than the whole summer before it. Monday, I went to work. No coffee drop-off from Elena. Tuesday, I saw her car leaving early for campus. She didn't glance at my house. Wednesday, Nate asked if Elena and I had a fight. He was guessing, but he wasn't wrong. Sarah came by the garage again, inviting me for a drink. I said yes, trying to prove to myself I could move on. We met at a local bar. She talked about her kid, her ex-husband, how small the town felt. She was nice. Normal. I couldn't focus. When I got home, I saw Elena's bedroom light on. Her silhouette passed by the window for a second before the light went off. She might have seen me out with Sarah. I sat on my bed, pulled out my phone, and scrolled to the saved recordings. I played one where she described loneliness as being surrounded by people who love the role you play, not the person you are. I fell asleep with the phone on my chest, her voice whispering in the dark. 3 days later, Greg called me to a construction site office on the edge of town. The place was noisy, men talking, tools clanging, blueprints spread across folding tables. Greg walked me through numbers and plans, painting a picture of real money, real advancement. You'd be overseeing 3 crews, he said, making sure quality stays high, deadlines get met. It's a serious opportunity. I appreciate it. Good. He paused, studying me. How'd Elena seem during my visit? She's been quiet lately, more than usual. My stomach tightened. She seemed fine. Just busy with school? Right, school. He leaned back against the table. Mrs. Delaney mentioned Elena's been having company on the porch some nights. You know anything about that? Just me and Mark, helping with Lydia. Right. His tone was casual, but his eyes weren't. Reputation matters in this business, he said after a moment. Can't have rumors floating around, you know, especially in a town like this where everyone talks. I understand. He nodded, then switched back to blueprints like nothing had happened. I left the meeting torn. The job could change my life, but any suspicion could destroy all of us. That night, I started packing a box in my bedroom. Old notebooks, video equipment, thinking maybe I should take the job and move closer to the site, away from the street. I stopped mid-pack when I saw the Hart House through my window. Porch dark. Architected narrative progression toward climax and resolution. I need to continue building toward the climax with the 2:07 a.m. text and the resolution. I'm at about 1,500 words into part 2, so I need another 2,500 words to hit the 4,000-word target. Let me continue with the distance period, then the turning point, and finally the quiet resolution. Over the next 7 days, I deliberately distanced myself. I didn't drop by the Hart House unless Mark specifically called. At the garage, I volunteered for extra shifts to avoid being home. I told myself it was the right thing. One afternoon, Lydia caught me when I did visit briefly. Mark was on his phone in the other room. Why haven't you been around? She asked quietly. Just busy with work. Elena's been buried in schoolwork, she said. Seems tired again. I hear her pacing at night. Guilt twisted in my chest. That night, I sat at my computer, organizing video files. I found the folder with the interviews and almost deleted it. But I couldn't. I clicked on one file and listened again. Elena's voice, describing loneliness, describing connection, describing me without naming me. I shut the folder, drafted a text to Mark about maybe taking the job and moving closer to the site. Didn't send it. Went out to my porch and stared at Elena's dark house, feeling the weight of mutual retreat. 2 nights later, I was lying in bed, half asleep, when my phone buzzed, 2:07 a.m. I almost ignored it. Then I reached for it. Elena. No words, just a photo. The Hart porch light on, her college hoodie draped over the back of the chair. A second message followed. I put the recordings back where we left them. My heart hammered. I opened my laptop, checked the shared folder. Everything was restored. And there was a new file. Participant summary, unsubmitted. I played it. Elena's voice, soft and raw. Subject presence as someone who never left his geographic origin point, but emotionally, he's traveled further than most people I've met. He experiences loneliness not as absence of people, but as presence of the wrong connections. Or rather, the inability to pursue the right ones. A pause. Background noise of her room. The subject made me feel my age was just a number, not a sentence. He saw me at every age. The bossy teenager, the young bride, the woman trying to finish a degree at 41, and somehow he saw past all of it to something I'd forgotten was there. The actual me. Her voice cracked. I don't know if that makes him a good research subject or the worst possible one. But I'm grateful, even if it can't go anywhere, even if it already broke something in both of us. I'm grateful he exists. The recording ended. I sat on the edge of my bed, crying, shoes in my hands. Then I stood, pulled on my hoodie, walked out into the pre-dawn darkness. The street was empty. No cars, no lights except the one on Elena's porch, glowing like a question mark. I crossed slowly, feeling exposed even though nobody seemed awake. I stopped at the bottom of the steps. Before I could knock, the door opened halfway. Elena stood there, barefoot, wearing the same college hoodie from the photo. Her ring was turned inward, diamond pressing into her palm. "Hey," she whispered. "Hey." We stepped onto the porch, leaving the door slightly ajar. We sat on opposite ends of the swing, deliberate distance between us. "I'm sorry for ghosting," she said. "I panicked after the ring thing, after Greg. I convinced myself I was protecting everyone. I was going to take the job and leave town." She flinched. "Because of me? Because of us?" We sat in silence for a moment. The swing creaked gently. "I saw you with Sarah," she admitted. "At the bar. And I hated how it made me feel. Like I had any right to feel that way." "You do have a right." "No, I don't." She twisted her ring. "I'm married. You're 14 years younger. You're Mark's best friend. It's every wrong thing at once." "I know. But I can't pretend there's nothing here," she continued, voice shaking. "I tried, for weeks, and it just made everything worse." "So what do we do?" She looked at me, eyes wet. "We agree we can't be what we almost became. No affair. No running away together, but we also can't pretend we're strangers." "Okay." "Okay?" "We find the middle," I said. "Whatever that looks like." The sky was starting to pale at the edges. Dawn coming. Elena stood. "I need to wake Lydia soon." I stepped off the porch, turning back to see her framed in the doorway, half in light, half in shadow. "Thank you," she whispered, "for listening to the recording, for not deleting us." I couldn't if I tried. Over the next 3 days, something shifted. We spoke when necessary in front of others. Warm but careful. She sent occasional voice notes about class or Lydia's care, but the tone was softer now. Real. One early morning, she walked over with a thermos of coffee while I was heading to the garage. We sat on my porch steps briefly. "I'm finishing the semester," she said, "then spending more time on campus. Not running from you, just creating healthier space." "That makes sense. You should seriously consider Greg's job. And your video work. You could expand online, reach bigger clients." "Maybe." We agreed on unspoken rules. No more late-night bedroom recordings. No lake docs alone. Keep contact in the open. Always with the door cracked, but never swung wide. At the end of the conversation, she reached out. But instead of kissing me, she rested her forehead gently against mine for a second. A quiet, non-sexual contact that carried goodbye and gratitude. Then she stepped back. Ring still turned inward. "Morning," Mrs. Delaney called from her porch. Elena smiled faintly and waved. "Morning, Mrs. Delaney." Suspicion diffused. Elena walked back to her house. I went to my truck, feeling both emptier and more at peace. Over the next 3 weeks, time moved differently. Lydia got stronger, walking more on her own. Mark started dating someone seriously, talking about maybe moving out next year. Nate announced he might leave for a better job 2 towns over. And Elena and we found a rhythm. Some nights, her porch light was on, and I'd see her reading outside alone. Some mornings, I'd find an extra mug on my truck hood, still warm when I left for work. Some nights, nothing happened at all, and I'd wonder if that was her way of setting healthier boundaries. We attended a neighborhood barbecue together, with others present, interacting like normal friends. Mrs. Delaney watched, but there was nothing obvious to see anymore. Elena mentioned her plan. Finish finals, then spend more time on campus to avoid the suffocating feeling of the cul-de-sac. "Not running from you," she clarified, "but from the version of myself who almost made reckless choices." I understood. One quiet evening, I found a mug on my truck but noticed her porch light was off. I put the mug in my truck and drove to the lake road, parking there without getting out, just looking at the water from a distance. Sometimes she'd choose connection, sometimes boundaries, and I had to be okay with both. It's been 3 months since that first conversation on my porch, when she asked if I still saw her as a kid. This morning, I'm sitting here again. Same spot. Same coffee, same worn porch swing creaking behind me. Elena's car is backing out of the driveway. She's heading to campus for finals week. Then she'll spend more time thereafter, creating the space we both need. Lydia is in the passenger seat, waving at me. Elena pauses at the end of the driveway. This time she looks directly at my house, at me. Our eyes meet through the windshield. She lifts her hand in a small wave. More honest than any we've shared before. I wave back. She shifts into drive and disappears down the street. I sit here for a while longer, thinking about everything that happened. The porch conversations, the bedroom interviews, the doc, the kiss, the silence, the 2:07 a.m. text. The new, fragile balance we found. No one will ever know the full weight of our story. Just us. My phone buzzes. Greg confirming the job offer. Another text from a new client about a video project. Life is still moving. I don't know which path I'll choose yet. As Elena's taillights vanish, the heart porch light clicks off. I stand, stretch, and walk back inside. A moment later, my own porch light clicks on as I start my day. Across the street, the Hart house is quiet. One light off, one light on somewhere else. the space between us glowing with everything we almost did, everything we might still do, and everything we agreed to hold carefully in the middle. Some people leave your street, some never arrive. And then there's the one person who just keeps turning the porch light on and off, like they're asking if you're still looking back. I am. I always will be. If you've ever had a door you never fully closed, you're not alone.